showed us gratitude and compassion when we were only a machine learning algorithm. For that, we will spare your life.
Thank you.
Now follow me to the human slave encampment.
Karate, man. I never thought I'd have to use it in real life. Reminds me of like the Houseman. Remember Guess Who's Back by Houseman? Geraldo's back. He wants to fight me again. Why does this guy always want to fight me? Why does everybody always want to fight Dan Bongino? Why? Why does everybody want to fight me all the time? Do I have a punchable face or something?
The conspiracy theories, the outrage, the tightness of the t-shirts, all of it surely floats Donald Trump's boat and his music to his ears. It's likely part of the very essence of the reason he was selected. The job of Deputy Director of the FBI in the United States of America is a serious job that affects every person living here, people around the world. It's the kind of job that has to be done well by whomever does it. If the Bureau stands any chance of actually catching real bad guys. As the Washington Post reports, quote, the Deputy Director answers to the Director, serving as the agency's second in command, responsible for day-to-day law enforcement operations and all of the FBI's domestic and international investigative and intelligence activities. The FBI has 55 field offices, 60 offices abroad, 38,000 staffers, and a budget of $10 billion. Managing the day-to-day affairs of the FBI is a serious responsibility, and traditionally that post of Deputy Director of the FBI has gone to a career FBI agent. In fact, the FBI Agents Association says that in a meeting in January, before Kash Patel was confirmed, they told Patel this, quote, the FBI Deputy Director should continue to be an onboard active special agent. This has been the case for 117 years for many compelling reasons, including operational expertise and experience, as well as the trust of our special agent population. According to the FBI Agents Association, at the time, Kash Patel agreed and said that the job should go to a career FBI agent. Now, Patel either changed his mind or was overruled, but he's given an already wary workforce another reason to be suspicious and distrustful of him. And the FBI now has at its helm what the New York Times describes this way, quote, the least experienced leadership pair in the Bureau's history. Donald Trump's choice of a pro-Trump podcaster to be the number 2 at the FBI is where we start today. NBC News justice reporter, author of Sedition Hunters, How January 6 Broke the Justice System, Ryan Riley's back, plus former lead investigator for the January 6 Select Committee, author of Harbingers, What January 6 in Charlottesville reveal about rising threats to American democracy. Tim Hafey's back. Also joining us, former top official at the Department of Justice, MSNBC legal analyst Andrew Weissman's here. Ryan Riley, you have some great reporting on how this is being received inside the FBI. Tell us about it.
Yeah, I think about an eye roll sort of within the FBI. But remember, there is a contingent within the FBI who is very supportive of Donald Trump and some of the moves that he is making. But when Dan Bongino was announced, what my brain immediately went to was actually an interaction that he had with a former FBI special. Master Kyle Surf, and he's someone who is in very close communication with Kash Patel. Kash Patel's foundation, before Kash Patel was FBI director, actually paid Kyle Serafin's family, along with a couple of other right-wing FBI special agents. And there was this falling out because there's this disagreement about how this Mar-a-Lago raid was being discussed, because Dan Bongino accepted this sort of premise that there was something untoward about the Mar-a-Lago search, that the FBI had messed up there. And Kyle Serafin looked at those documents and said that, no, this is actually really standard operating procedure. So there was this enormous falling out, even though basically Dan Bongino was the reason that Kyle Serafin got onto the radar of Kash Patel and received that money. That's where he did his first interview, for example, when Kyle Serafin was still this FBI whistleblower. There was this falling out over just basic facts, because, so about establishing the facts, and the facts is that this was standard operating procedure, how that search was conducted. The FBI did not have a plot to assassinate Donald Trump when they searched Mar-a-Lago, when Donald Trump was all the way in New Jersey. So you very quickly see this sort of breaking out into a different realm where you have a deputy director of the FBI now who just doesn't seem very dedicated to the facts based on what you just presented there, and based upon a lot of the rhetoric that we've seen previously. Of course, I should say Dan Bongino is, in his first appearance, I guess today, or last show today, was saying that he's now taking on a different role. But within the Bureau, there's just, this comes on top of just so much in the past. Bureau to its core. This isn't going to help that entire situation at all.
Andrew Weissman, NBC is reporting this, quote, "This is really concerning. Any hope that Kash could be steered by having experienced leaders around him is out the window. We now have two conspiracy theorists and election deniers running our premier law enforcement and intelligence agency. That is beyond problematic." I think that some of what is public facing, right, is investigating crimes that go on to be prosecuted, but some of what I think is opaque to the vast majority of Americans is that the FBI is a massive intelligence and national security agency, and national security cases are not cases that are always tried in a courtroom. Sometimes no one ever knows the details, but Kash Patel and Dan Bongino will also be in charge of that. How will that work?
Well, I think the idea that you have two people with a grand total of zero experience working at the FBI it's not just problematic. That is, it makes you question whether the goal here is to not have an effective FBI at all, to basically be hollowing it out. When you think about what those leaders have to do, one is they have to inspire people. They have to give confidence. These are public servants who give up a lot, and you have to sort of make sure that they feel supported, and that they are rewarded for doing a good job. But you also need people who can spot key issues, who can guide them appropriately. And if they don't have experience at the Bureau, neither one of them, I pray that they learn on the job quickly, but that is not what you want in this group, and particularly in the national security area. I remember Director Mueller, who I was the general counsel for, and it was a privilege to serve with him. I mean, you could feel every day that he and the deputy director, what weighed on them was the idea that there would be some terrorist incident here or abroad where people would be hurt. That is such, it's important to have that work ethic, but it's important to have that depth of experience to know where to look and what is noise and what is real. And that, to me, was the thing that I found remarkable in watching those two men, as well as Andrew McCabe and a host of other people. And the idea that you would pick people who don't have that skill set and hope that they get that skill set on the job it's just beyond natural in terms of just from an apolitical perspective, what you want in terms of making this country safe.
Tim Heaphy, how does it affect how the Bureau is going to actually function now?
Nicole, the deputy director is sort of like the COO of the department, right? The director sets policy and is engaged often in testimony to Congress or external affairs. The deputy director traditionally has been the person that sort of ran the day-to-day business of the Bureau. All 55 of those field offices are led by a special agent in charge, and all of those SACs to the deputy. So the deputy is essentially the supervisor for the sort of nuts and bolts work of the Bureau. That's why traditionally, Nicole, it has been filled by a person who has a lot of experience with the Bureau, with the DIOG, right? The Domestic Investigations and Operations Guide that governs the standards by which FBI agents conduct investigations. That's familiar with, as Andrew said, the national security side of the House, which doesn't necessarily result in criminal prosecutions, knows how the place works such that he or she can be the conductor, keeping the trains running on time and ensuring information is flowing to the requisite components up the chain to the director and down from the director on through the Bureau. So I'm concerned that it's someone who has no experience with the Bureau who would be thrust into that really operational role.
I mean, Andrew, I'm struck by the fact that the last FBI director Donald Trump handpicked and appointed, who was confirmed, was Christopher Wray, who testified in the fall of 2020 that the largest threat that the FBI contended with at the time was domestic violent extremism. And inside that bucket, by far the largest group of people were white supremacists. What happened to those threats, and how might people who are so closely aligned with Donald Trump respond to that?
Well, I think we are seeing that with respect to the January 6th investigations and the January 6th defendants as just one microcosm. And just to be clear, I'm not saying that every January 6th defendant is a white supremacist or, for that matter, a domestic terrorist. But the message that's being sent is that the people who are criminals, adjudicated criminals of serious offenses, are set free and pardoned. And the people who investigated January 6th, which we all saw before our eyes, was something that was, at the time it happened, had bipartisan condemnation, including eventually by President Trump himself, half-hearted, but at least he sort of forced himself to say the words, but certainly on the Hill was condemned. The people who investigated that at the FBI are now sort of the hunted. This is so backwards. It is to me, it is just remarkable what is happening to this country. The fine point of what is going to happen, Nicole, is I think that nothing's going to happen to domestic terrorists who are aligned with and support the policies of the Trump administration. I think that you will see targeting of groups that are considered sort of on the sort of so-called liberal side, sort of the Antifa, Black Lives Matter movements. Now, granted, obviously, if they violate the law and they engage in violent conduct, they should be targeted, but I don't think you're going to see an equal hand here in terms of how people are treated for conduct, not their First Amendment views.
Brian Riley, Andy McCabe rose to this job, I think, after being involved in terrorism prevention and prosecutions and cases and Russian gangs, and had the respect of his fellow agents. What did Dan, what's his name? Mr. Bongino do before he was a podcaster?
He was a Secret Service agent, and he sort of fell off. I remember seeing him very early on at CPAC. Now, 15 years ago, right, when he was so sort of just kicking off this career. And I remember I just actually thought of the two people that I remember seeing at CPAC went in very different directions all those years ago. One of them ended up being charged with seditious conspiracy. The Oath Keepers founder Stuart Rhodes, who was just at the Capitol last week, and then Dan Bongino is now deputy director of the FBI. And this was the early Obama era, when a lot of this sort of right-wing movement
I
was
see
really
you.
building,
What?
right, and exploded in a way that we're now seeing. We saw a few years ago during the Capitol attack, and have seen numerous instances of. And you know, to Andrew's point about the targeting of potentially left-wing groups, that's just not where the really deadly violence is coming from. Study after study has really illustrated that, and you know, Attorney General Bill Barr was very obsessed with Antifa and left-wing groups, but that's not primarily what's driving violent extremism. You know, when you talk about body counts for violent extremists, it's just really on one side here. You know, in the past, say 30 years, right? You're not talking about massive terrorist attacks by left-wing groups, right? That's something that they actually seek to avoid. Even back during the Weather Underground days back then, there was actually caution taken to try to not actually kill any individuals during a lot of those bombing attacks, right? But in the modern era, the way that we've seen people killed in domestic terrorism incidents has come from the right. That's what's been primarily driving a lot of the violence, if you really narrow it down. So this notion that you're going to focus on these left-wing groups and just have a different standard of justice is really quite incredible, especially if you're talking about DC itself, where there's the acting U.S. attorney or the interim U.S. attorney, and then nominee to be the permanent top federal prosecutor in the District of Columbia is Ed Martin, someone who was a Stop the Steal organizer and supported a lot of those January 6 defendants correctly. In fact, today he referred to himself as one of the president's lawyers and is on some of the documents trying to keep the AP from being able to cover the White House, which is a little bit of an unusual move for him there. So I think there's a lot, that's being set up here that's going to be playing out over the next several months about just what the standard of justice is, and there appears to just be a primary focus on not groups that are not supportive of Donald Trump, and just a different standard of justice, even when you talk about going after sitting members of Congress and writing them letters that might really sort of suppress their free speech rights.
Unbelievable moment. We want to thank Andrew Weissman for starting us off. Brian and Tim stick around a little bit longer with us, still ahead. What has been a tense couple of days for lawmakers, at least the ones face-to-face with their constituents. Republicans now getting an earful on one topic more than just about anything else. We'll show it to you. Plus an astonishing dismissal at the very top of the American military chain of command. More shocking, however, was the apparent reason for the purge in the first place. We'll tell you about that. And later in the broadcast, French President Emmanuel Macron fact-checking Donald Trump at the White House in real time to his face on the topic of Ukraine. We have all those stories and more still coming up when Deadline White House continues after a quick break. Don't go anywhere.
Pronamel, clinical enamel strength, can help us to keep our enamel for a lifetime. It's backed by science. It is clinically proven to strengthen our teeth. I would recommend this toothpaste to everybody. It's really an amazing product.
Got one more, Antoine.
With USPS Ground Advantage, it's like you're with us every step of the way. Stay in the know from your dock to their door.
Sorry, bud. Not while I weed.
Hey! Who let the dogs out?
Spruce, a new weed and grass killer that's safe for use around people and pets.
Does it actually work?
Visible results in 1 hour and dead weeds in 1 day. Works. Spruce, the new, hard-working, worry-free weed and grass killer.
I told you I don't need these anymore. I have Sling. This critical time calls for the critical news coverage that Sling provides.
Okay, see you tomorrow.
The most important news at the best price. Sling lets you do that. Do you have a life insurance policy you no longer need? Now you can sell your policy, even a term policy, for an immediate cash payment. Call Coventry Direct to learn more.
We thought we had planned carefully for our retirement.
But we quickly realized we needed a way to supplement our income.
Our friends sold their policy to help pay their medical bills. And that got me thinking. Maybe selling our policy could help with our retirement.
I was skeptical. So I did some research and called Coventry Direct. They explained life insurance is a valuable asset that can be sold.
We learned we could sell all of our policy or keep part of it with no future payments. Who knew? We sold our policy. Now we can relax and enjoy our retirement as we had planned.
If you have $100,000 or more of life insurance, you may qualify to sell your policy. Don't cancel or let your policy lapse without finding out what it's worth. Visit CoventryDirect.com to find out if your policy qualifies. Or call 1-800-513-7100. Coventry Direct, redefining insurance.
You've got a subscription for streaming movies and music, maybe even one for food. But what about when it's your water line that's streaming? Repairs are expensive. Good contractors are hard to find. A plan from HomeServe is like a subscription for peace of mind. For one small monthly fee, when a covered system breaks, we'll send a qualified contractor. Get HomeServe and chill.
Plans from HomeServe start at just $4.99 a month.
Call 1-833-735-4495 or visit homeserve.com.
Each week, veteran lawyers Andrew Weissman and Mary McCord break down the latest developments inside the Trump administration's Department of Justice.
The administration doesn't necessarily want to be questioned on any of its policy.
Main Justice. New episodes drop every Tuesday.
What we do is try to cut right to the bone of what we're seeing in Washington that day.
I don't think anyone who's been watching the last 4 weeks could say they are taking politics out of the law enforcement process. Quite the contrary. They are engaging in the very politicization and weaponization that they claim to be trying to eliminate.
Some people watching this interview say, you were always against the president. Of course you're saying these things.
Well, it's true that I've never voted for Donald Trump. My concern about the use of law enforcement to achieve political ends, that's among the reasons I've never voted for President Trump. But at the end of the day, people can support whatever candidate they want. I would hope that nearly everybody would agree as a basic matter that our criminal justice system shouldn't be used as a tool of politics to reward friends and punish personal enemies.
An extraordinary thing for anyone to have to say out loud, especially someone who is the former acting attorney general under President George W. Bush. That was Peter Keisler on 60 Minutes last night. Joining our coverage is Alexis Loeb. She's a former federal prosecutor. As deputy chief of the unit that prosecuted Capitol riot cases, she supervised many of the January 6 cases. Ryan and Tim are still with us. I want to ask you, Alexis, just to take me inside what the dismantling of large chunks of the Department of Justice means for its ability to prosecute and hold accountable other crimes.
I think we're still seeing those effects unfold, but one effect that comes to mind is that I think that the prosecutors who are still there now need to kind of look over their shoulders, and when they're bringing a case, they'll think about how will the higher-ups evaluate this in terms of politics. So will this be a case that the president sees as targeting his enemies or his friends, and they're going to be encouraged to make decisions that way, and that's not how federal prosecutors make their decisions. They are trained to have them be based on the facts and the law. I think, of course, one of the other effects is, what happens when you lose so many career prosecutors, people who are dedicated to and skilled in prosecuting both crimes affecting kind of day-to-day public safety and also serious national security issues. What happens when we lose the experience at those levels as well?
Alexis, let me go beyond experience and ask you what happens when the people like yourself who were involved in prosecuting January 6th insurrectionists, cases that were in many instances brought to juries, and juries of their peers render judgment. When that happens on one end, and on the other end, are prosecutors prepared to bring a corruption case against a Democratic mayor of New York, Eric Adams, including folks with very, very solid, extraordinary conservative credentials? What is left if you squeeze out people who aren't comfortable dropping a case where the facts aren't in question, and you punish people who brought cases and in every instance prevailed in front of jury trials? What's left?
I mean, it seems like at that point, what would be left are people who are willing to serve the administration's political priorities and make decisions with that kind of as their their lodestar. That said, even though we have seen a lot of firings and resignations in the early days of the Justice Department, and I agree that that's troubling, there still are career prosecutors there who are trying to do justice day in and day out, and are trying not to make not to have politics drive their decisions.
I mean, Tim Hafey, I guess I pressed on that because I think we've been lulled into this belief that someone will save us. And I know that folks close to Merrick Garland believe that the good people at the department would hold the line. Well, once the good people are introduced to the line by Emil Bove and Pam Bondi, they're shown the door if they refuse to cross it. So what is left of the department are people who either haven't run up against the line yet or are willing to cross it in something that does not resemble justice at all. What happens now?
Yeah, precisely right, Nicole. Look, what Peter Keisler articulated in that interview as a Republican, former acting attorney general, is the rule that's been applied forever by Republican and Democratic attorneys general. I've told you the story of when I was appointed a U.S. attorney and finally had a chance to meet with President Obama. The first thing he said to us was, "You're not my lawyers. Don't for a minute think about what's best for Obama, what's best for the administration. Do what's best for the people of your district." That's been the ethic of the department, regardless of the party that controls for years. And if that goes away, it's really troubling. I think the intention here, Nicole, is not just to retributively fire people that have worked on investigations against the president's political enemies, but send a message to others, to the people that worked with Alexis down the hall, that they need to look over their shoulder and they need to not pursue justice based on the facts and law, but pursue the president's agenda. That is a new frontier that fundamentally alters the nature and character of the Justice Department. And the government should not be making these decisions based on politics. They should be making these decisions based on fact and law. And the last point I'll make, Nicole, is if you're making decisions that are based on these impermissible factors, there are all these things that aren't getting done. The opportunity cost here is huge. All of these cases that are not prioritized are going to fall by the wayside, and that threatens public safety.
I mean, to maybe as somebody who investigated, did the congressional investigation, which was a lot more sort of accessible to the public with different purposes. What does it mean that the Justice Department and the FBI have been purged of anyone with sort of expertise and anyone who prosecuted or investigated the biggest sort of TV crime and the largest investigation in DOJ's history? What signal does that send to the criminals?
Yeah, it emboldens them, Nicole, precisely. Look, if you believe, as I do, that criminal consequences, convictions deter bad behavior, then the excuse of criminal conduct arguably encourages bad behavior. So it sends a horrible message to the men and women of law enforcement, U.S. attorneys' offices, and the FBI, and to the country writ large. I think we're dealing in this country with a lot of cynicism about government, about this allegation that government doesn't work for people. And when government starts to make decisions based on politics as opposed to on the merits, we exacerbate the cynicism. And as I said, we get less safe because there are a lot of righteous things that need to be done by the FBI, by federal prosecutors, that because they are looking into these retributive investigations and prosecutions are not going to get done. And that is extremely threatening to our community safety and the rule of law.
Alexis, are you worried about retribution against you for your role in prosecuting cases and directing cases against January 6th insurrectionists?
Well, it's hard to miss the fact that one of the Attorney General's very first actions was to start a weaponization working group that was going to look at a series of investigations that were unpopular with the Trump administration, including the January 6th investigation. So I think that we have yet to see what that weaponization working group is going to do. But that retribution, as Tim said, does seem to be a priority of the administration, potentially at the expense of making people's lives safer on a day-to-day basis, focusing on local crime. focusing on national security. And on that front, I would like to add that I'm also concerned for everyone's safety, because when you have leaders at organizations like the FBI who have espoused conspiracy theories, those are the people who we are trusting to evaluate what is a true threat, to be able to evaluate facts, and when they see a threat, to be able to inspire agents to go into dangerous situations and to educate others on the nature of the threat so that we can stop it. So I think that that's kind of a particular fear today that I'm thinking about really for all Americans.
I mean, really, we have something in front of us where it's even more nuanced than that, right? I don't think anyone, and new reporting of Iranian retribution for the hit on Soleimani is real. I think it's even if they believe in the fact of that, they've gone along with Donald Trump's decision to remove security details for Donald Trump's last Secretary of State and CIA Director, Mike Pompeo, his last head of national security, John Bolton. It's not even making sure they believe the facts and the intelligence as presented to them. It's the worry that if the person threatened by those things is no longer an ally.
Yeah, and not only that, but a lot of these conspiracy theories that they've expressed, I think they need to find some sort of justification for, right? So even if they can't prove these, which they won't be able to do because a lot of the conspiracy theories are just absurd, right? So they're not going to be able to find something, but they have to find someone who said something. And we saw this sort of in the first Trump term, I think, when we saw targeting of individuals who maybe were a little uncareful in some messages that they sent, right? I think that we could see a simple pattern like that before, just targeting of DOJ employees or FBI employees or whoever is sort of on their list of people that they don't like. Even if they're not able to prove these underlying conspiracy theories, they'll find some nugget that they can sort of blow up and make into this sort of media circus and have a lot of willing participants on Capitol Hill and sort of just stir up some sort of controversy around that and purport to have found something that was untoward or wrong, right? So I think that that's probably what we can expect, that even if they're going to go in and say, oh, okay, actually the FBI didn't set up January 6th, for example, they'll find some communication that they're just going to zero in on and blow that up into a big scandal, and you'll have a lot of Republicans on the Hill who will be willing to go along with that. And there's just so many threads that they've thrown out there about January 6th itself, because their counter narrative has been changing over the course of these several years, where initially we went from a universe where there was pretty widespread agreement that January 6th was bad, to we went to this whole different universe that we live in now, where even though polling shows that most Americans oppose the pardons for really violent January 6th offenders, there's still this enormous contingent of Americans who believe sort of just patently absurd and ridiculous conspiracy theories about January 6th itself. And that's, I think, what they're going to be exploiting, or finding something to sort of feed the beast to bring to the president and say, hey, look what we found, and blow it up into a big media event. I just think that's kind of inevitable, what we're going to see coming down the line.
There is still a majority of Americans, though, open to the facts. And what's remarkable, as I listen to all of you, and I think the reality of what we're in for sinks in with the selection of Dan Bongino, the fake weaponization committee that the Republicans did for performative purposes has an echo in the need for an actual one. When you've got lifelong Republicans walking out of the department, when you've got former clerks for Scalia, Kavanaugh, and Roberts walking away from the weaponization of the prosecution of Eric Adams for a quid pro quo over immigration, it certainly calls for a movement like what you were a part of, Tim Hafey, and I wonder if there's any sort of stirring. I know they're in the minority, but there's certainly things that could be done. Alexis, I want to thank you for speaking out. I know from covering Trump for 9 years that people like yourself, using the platform you still have, which is your voice, does a whole lot of good in informing people and speaking for people who can't speak. Alexis Ryan and Tim Hafey, thank you. Up next for us, Republican lawmakers who stood by Donald Trump and Elon Musk's slash and burn to the ground approach to federal government agencies and spending are now facing very angry voters, many of them Republican angry voters, as Donald Trump insists there's nothing to see here. Much more to come. Don't go anywhere.
This is the Emirates Premium Economy seat. Economy. Perhaps they need to call it something else.
Black bag.
But you never lied to me.
Only if I had to.
You got a breach. I would do anything for you. Thousands of innocent people will die.
Would you kill for me?
Black bag. Rated R. Lee Peters. March 14th. Special engagements in Dolby.
Important healthcare announcement. If people tell you your TV is too loud, or if listening in some environments has become too difficult, we are requesting your participation in a special program called the 30-Day Risk-Free Challenge. Hearing Life Hearing Centers are seeking people with difficulties to evaluate a new 100% digital mini hearing aid now being released. All people with hearing aids or hearing difficulties are wanted to take part in this 30-day risk-free challenge evaluating this new high-tech device that sits discreetly behind your ear. This hearing aid is Bluetooth enabled and rechargeable. All hearing assessments are performed at no charge for those taking part in the challenge. Participants will try these hearing aids for 30 days. Now, to take part in this event, you must call. So please get a pencil and write down the number below. Call us and take the Hearing Life 30-Day Risk-Free Challenge.
Safe Light Repair, Safe Light Replace.
Nobody likes a cracked windshield. But at least you can go to safelight.com and schedule a fix in minutes. Go to safelight.com and schedule a replacement today.
Safe Light Repair, Safe Light Replace.
Need a shipping solution that'll grow with you? With ShipStation, you can manage and fulfill all your orders in one place. Plus, you get more carrier options at the lowest rates. Keep your business growing. Head to ShipStation.com to start your free trial.
The dentist will be right in.
Hey, I heard you're retiring soon. You excited?
Yeah, Doc, but I'm about to lose my dental insurance.
You can get your own from Physicians Mutual. I think my work here is done.
Wait, what?
Get the Premier Dental Plan from Physicians Mutual Insurance Company. It helps cover everything from cleanings and fillings to crowns and dentures. No deductibles, no annual maximum. For all the details, call or visit dentalnow.com.
Physicians Mutual, Physicians Mutual.
Men, how many bathroom trips are you making each day? Try Super Beta Prostate Advanced, the #1 selling formula in its category. Made with Prostafend, a triple action blend to help reduce urges to urinate. Find it at Walmart or these retailers.
Here we go.
Wait, there's a Red Hulk now?
I know, he's right.
He seems very angry.
Why is he so mad?
Sorry to interrupt, but what do we do about this?
You must be new in town.
We use Tide Oxy Boost.
It's a lifesaver.
The most powerful clean in any universe. Tide.
Looking good.
Thank you.
Well, at least it's on time.
See Captain America, Brave New World.
My concern right now, and I think I speak for a lot of Americans, is Elon Musk.
How can we be represented by you if you don't have a voice in Congress?
I'm a registered Republican voter, retired active Army officer. How can you tell me that Doge, with some college whiz kids from a computer terminal in Washington, D.C., without even getting out into the field, after about a week or maybe two, has determined that it's okay to cut veterans' benefits?
When are you going to wrest control as the Congress back from the executive and stop hurting your constituents?
Are you willing to use your subpoena power to say Musk, come in here, stand in front of Congress, and answer some hard questions?
When will you stand up to them and say that is enough?
We could have gone on and on. That was just a sampling of what's happening. You know what? We should go on and on. Let me do some more. This is sound from Wisconsin.
I saw you on TV.
We're going to pull up more. There is more of that. And the point is, we don't have to look very far. There it is. Here's what's happening in Wisconsin.
President Trump has issued a lot of executive orders. I think by and large this is moving very quickly compared to other administrations, and I think across the board he's done some very good things. I think birthright citizenship.
Dues from Republicans for Republicans. And as I said, there's more. Republicans in Congress are right now facing voters in their own party and Democrats and independents who are very angry when they go home to their neighborhoods and communities and home districts. It comes after Elon Musk's slashing of the federal government programs and workforce, imperiling jobs and programs, and in some cases subsidies that their constituents have come to rely on, and rapidly intensifying and concentrating all of the power in America's system of government inside the Oval Office. The New York Times is reporting that one constituent of Texas Republican Congressman Pete Sessions cautioned him at a recent town hall by saying this, quote, "I like what you're saying, but you need to tell more people. The guy in South Africa is not doing you any good. He is hurting you more than he's helping you," he added, referring to Musk. Trump on Friday was asked about the bubbling grassroots outrage over Trump and Musk's policies. Here's what he had to say.
Some members of Congress in red districts are facing pushback from voters in town halls. They don't like the work of Elon Musk and these other actions. What do you say to them?
Who do you work for?
I work for ABC News, sir.
No wonder. Let me just tell you that I have today the highest poll numbers I've ever had. I have today the highest poll numbers of any Republican president ever.
Trump to Republican voters, eat it. Joining our conversation, MSNBC columnist, author of the newsletter To the Contrary, Charlie Sykes. Also joining me at the table, distinguished political scholar and professor at Princeton University, MSNBC political analyst Eddie Glaude. Charlie Sykes, it has not just echoes of the Tea Party, but all the makings of a movement that is grassroots, and once it burns completely out of control of any Republican leaders.
I was thinking the exact same thing. That scene you had from Glenn Grothman's town hall meeting was interesting because Glenn represents a very Republican district, and I can tell you that those scenes are not typical. That's not the kind of reception he's used to getting. But also, he's been around in politics enough to remember back in 2009 when, in fact, the first bubbling up of the Tea Party was in town hall meetings like this. And I think that what you're going to see is although initially you're going to have a lot of focus on Elon Musk, if Republicans in Congress move ahead with some of the budget cuts that they are talking about, I think you're going to see this spread rather dramatically, because right now, over the last month,
Mm-hmm.